How do I start this thing?
Have you plugged the bloody USB in?
Yeah, it's in.
Nah, man, that's the wrong port. Oh, wait, it's flashing now.
It's recording.
Well, let's start this thing, fool.
Hello, everyone. I'm Amelia.
Hi, I'm Sam. Welcome to Ask the Duo podcast, a podcast where we get deep into those late-night, unfiltered conversations.
We'll be discussing all things lifestyle, relationship, mindset, and more.
All right, let's get to it.
Hello.
Hello, welcome back. Nice. Soundboard here.
That is some pretty good dubstep, right?
Yes.
Have you ever had moments where during a situation or during a time, you, like, as you're thinking through the situation that's happening at that point in time, you think something's happening in a certain way, either you're like, oh shit, this is not how I thought it was going to turn out, or oh shit, this is really bad, or like you had these kind of thoughts and moments have passed, or someone recorded you, or you listen back and you look back and you realize you're like, oh shit, the situation actually wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. Have you ever had those kind of moments?
Yeah, many times. And it's always those moments where you just blow things out of proportion. And in that moment, you're like, fuck, could have done something different.
Or you're like, I'm an idiot. Why did I say that?
Yeah, or say something different, but it ended up being something totally different. So,
Yeah, so I want to just discuss this because it definitely happens in my mind. Like, most of the time it's around me saying something. I'm like, oh, I shouldn't have said that. Or I did something. I'm like, oh, why did I do that? I'm such an idiot. Like, that are the things I think about. So I want to chat with you to see, what you think or how you think around this, like your mindset.
Yeah. I'll start off with one of my examples. So there was a moment where I wanted to propose a whole new system, a software that just basically was more efficient, more effective.
Yep.
And the current place that I was working at, basically they did everything manually. So very old school, sort of old, paperwork sort of shit. Anyway, long story short, I didn't know how to approach it because I've never done it before, right? It's basically you're selling a system to your manager. Right.
You have to pitch it and
you basically have to pitch it.
Switch over.
Yeah, and just, I guess, coming from a point where it's convincing, but seeing the point that you're coming at. So anyway, long story short, I compiled a presentation as such, and I proposed this to other workers just to make sure that they were okay with it. They were full into it, supported it. So when that moment came, I basically proposed the whole thing. And during the conversation, I realized that there were a few benefits that I didn't talk about. So obviously, as you're in the moment and in the zone of talking and showing and that sort of shit, I had that moment where I was like, fuck, I totally left this main key component out of the conversation. So time generally flies when you're doing a pitch. So, and at the end of it, they came back to me and said, dude, that was probably the best thing you've ever fucking shown us. And I was like, are you serious? And they're like, yeah, dude, like whatever you've shown, this is exactly what we need for the business to grow and to expand. And I was thinking, fuck, okay, that is good news because I was thinking otherwise. Because I left a massive key component out of the conversation.
Yeah.
And obviously, as you're in that kind of zone, you just spit fire, right? You don't really, sometimes you just overlook certain things. So to have the manager or the owner or the director come to you and go, look, that was fucking good. Let's organize this. Let's get it put in place.
Yeah.
Was huge.
Yeah. I think that's good. And especially, I think in those kind of situations, if you've left out something, because the stuff that you do, I do that a lot for work, so it comes naturally to me. So what I would do is, after I present, I'm like, this is what I presented, take your time, have a look through it. But here are some extra key components that I wanted to add to it that I didn't get to speak to during the presentation, as it can get quite long. And then you send either your slides or your presentation through as an email, add your dot points, and you can slip it through that way too. So I think it's fine that you left it out, and it's good that for you, I think your mindset is you didn't really beat yourself up for it and be like, oh shit, I'm an idiot for leaving it out, which is good. But I'm just saying, like, as a scenario, you could also just be like, hey, after this presentation, I'm going to email you the stuff that I went through so you can have another look. Here is some extra stuff that I wanted to add to it, and have a sit on it, come back to me, see what you think.
Yeah, that was actually my approach after it, but knowing that, I was approached and said, look, we're going to do it.
Yeah, that's really good.
I didn't really bother. But yeah, that was definitely my action plan if things were a bit iffy or going south, was to follow up with the additional components that were left out.
This is very marketing, very sales, but don't need to follow up. Just send that email afterwards.
Yeah.
Always just send it to them so they have the information afterwards, like straight after your pitch, so that it's in the top of their mind.
Yeah.
And it's in written form too.
Yeah, I know, but obviously in this scenario, it was totally different.
Just tips for anyone out there who wants to do presentations. I had quite a similar scenario. I was doing just a talk, a seminar to a massive corporation, and I was just teaching them how to use a platform. I was never a public speaker, and I was always scared of standing up, talking on stage and all that kind of stuff. But now this is what I strive to do. This is whole different topic. One day I would love to be a person who can just stand up on stage and do talks, do panel speaking and all that kind of stuff. I really love that. This was my very first one. I had to just do this talk in front of, I think, 100 people, or maybe just under 100, which is a lot of people for a very first time standing up speaking. And they are quite on the elderly generation. So getting them to understand and use a platform, I had to understand how to speak to them, like that generation, so that they understand, and also not to bore them, because you can get quite technical with a platform. So I was standing up there doing the pitch, not the pitch, I keep saying pitch, doing the speech, and no one was giving any reactions. Everyone was sitting there staring at you, you're like blank, and you start to self-doubt yourself, and you're like wondering, am I doing a good job? But do they not understand me? And am I not talking properly? Do they not even know what I'm talking about? Like, I'm thinking about all these things. And then after I did that talk, that webinar, a few people did come to me, and even like my manager at the time was like, dude, you presented yourself really well and you were so confident, and people really loved what you were presenting, and it helped them understand how to use this platform. And I was like, true, like really similar to you, like you didn't think that. And how I was thinking in my head was completely different from what people were seeing from the outside. Like, people were saying like I looked really confident and I knew what I was talking about. Whereas in my head, I felt like my hands were shaking, my hands were like sweating, and like I'm stumbling on my words and I'm not making any sense. So I think a lot of it is just in your head.
Yeah, 100%.
Most of the time it's you catastrophizing it, whereas on the outside, people can't tell.
Yeah, and I think it also depends on how you express yourself too, because body language is a big thing too, right?
Yeah.
Because obviously if you're nervous and you show that, then people are going to know that you are nervous. And sometimes
my hands were shaking. I'm pretty sure. Well, I don't know. Maybe they were sitting too far away.
Yeah.
Elderly generation didn't have their glasses on and couldn't see my hands shaking, but I was definitely shaking.
Yeah.
Like, first talk in front of 100 people, dude, that's scary.
It is, 100 people is a fair bit. But I mean, at the end of the day, you held yourself strong in terms of presenting.
Yeah.
And obviously that worked. Whatever you did, it worked.
I think another tip that I kept telling myself is just keep going, keep pushing through, keep showing that you're confident, because this is my job. I know what I'm doing. So I do actually know what I'm talking about. And at the end of the day, if you do know what you're talking about and you know what you're doing, that will carry you through whatever you're doing, whether it's a speech or a job interview, whatever it is. So that's the thing that I kept thinking in my head, is like, just keep going. Just go through the things that you know, and also think about what do they want to learn from this. Like, what are some key things that they would take away from your speech? Like, don't go through all the small stuff that you're going to work on to help them. Like, it's something that where they can use it for themselves.
Yeah. And it's also handy to understand your target market or the people that you're talking to.
Yeah.
Because if you know how they comprehend certain information, that will help you present.
Yeah. That's very marketing talk, but could leave that for another day.
Yeah.
But that's an example. Do you have another one where during the situation you thought it was worse than it was in real life?
Yeah. Multiple times in job interviews. Obviously, as you're doing the interview, you know, that depending on who is interviewing you, they will ask you questions depending on what your position is or the job that you're interviewing for. And there have been multiple scenarios or situations where I would stumble on questions. And even sometimes, like, I'm in that moment and I'm like, shit, my answer doesn't directly answer that question that they've asked. So I always, in the moment, think, oh, am I answering this correctly? Do I sound confident, or am I overthinking? But I think the biggest thing that pushed me through it is just, I guess, keep going. You know what I mean? Like what you said, just finish it. Just be as confident as possible, but not being overconfident. Because sometimes being overconfident can ruin you.
Yeah, no, these are good points. And I think in a job interview sense, even though you're not answering the question directly, I think if you know what you're talking about, again, like you talk about addressing the things that you know and also addressing the position that you're talking about, you can always loop it back in as well and be like, and how this relates to your question, or in addition to this is blah, blah, blah. So like, as long as you know what you're doing and carry yourself and still carry on, you can still push through.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is being yourself. Because I feel that sometimes the mentality of being confident is to be like someone else. Like a lot of people, they watch how like other people speak or how confident others talk, and they try to mimic that.
Yeah.
And when they mimic that, that's not them in their genuine self.
Yeah. I think on the other side of that, though, it's actually good that you have someone to look up to in terms of seeing how confident they speak, and you want to be confident as well. So you try to be like that.
Yeah.
But trying that and seeing what works and what doesn't work, how far you can take it and how little you can take it, that helps you grow as well. So I think that's the other spectrum. You can copy, but like put your flavor into it.
Yeah, put your own flavor to the mix.
Yeah.
Because some people pick it up, like, you know what I mean? Like, oh, you're trying to be like someone. That's not you being you.
Yeah. But like reeling it back into how this relates in, that's not how you remembered it during the time, is that I think most of the time you overthink it yourself. Like if you've stumbled on something, you've missed it, the interviewer themselves or just people in general, I think they're quite forgiving. They know that you might stumble or it might be a hard question, and they know that they threw you a hard question. So they would be like, they're not going to just cross you off just because you weren't able to answer or you sat there for a little bit to sink into the question for a bit. Like they're not going to be like, nah, I can't hire you. Well, people are quite forgiving, and as long as you can deliver, they generally are quite happy.
Yeah, that is true. And generally they are quite forgiving, but there is a small minority that don't.
Yeah.
And that's just unfortunately how the world works. But in most cases, if you fumble or something like that, like people understand. It's just human nature.
Yeah, and I think this happens as well. I'm just talking about in terms of relation to this topic, is because you hold yourself accountable and you make yourself want to be so perfect. But everyone out there knows that you're not perfect. Like you're not going to be. But as long as you are confident and can address what they wanted to hear or what they wanted to see from you, it's fine. Like, even if you stumble.
Yeah. And I think it's really important too, adding to that, is to make the mistake. Sometimes you say something wrong, but you can always learn from that moment.
Yeah.
And apply that in your next endeavor or whatever.
Yeah.
So mistakes will obviously help you grow.
Yeah. So another example I have for this is more outside of work and stuff. Maybe something more personal. So say a friend took it too far, kept giving you shit, and you're not a person who pushes back or be like, hey, you got to stop this. You got too angry, you've been bottling up for so long, you retaliated and yelled at a friend. So in your head during that moment, you're like, oh shit, why am I so mean? I probably shouldn't have done that. Now my friend's going to hate me. We're not going to be friends anymore. Like that kind of overthinking spiral that goes in your head. But if you go back and ask your other friends and be like, hey, was I too mean, or was I too harsh, or should I have not said that? Like, say your friend was like, no, like you stood up for yourself. So you, again, catastrophize in your head and you're just overthinking, and other people are like, no, you did really well because you actually stood up for yourself.
Yeah, and that is a good point. And I have had a similar experience, but I'm on a slightly different scenario where I'm telling someone else what they're doing and that's wrong.
Mm.
So I've come out and I've picked up that someone has said something or done something that I didn't particularly agree with. And I obviously in the moment, knowing me, I'm a little aggressive or assertive, if you want to call it that. So I basically just told this person off for doing something because it wasn't morally correct, and I felt bad. So obviously in the moment I thought, shit, maybe I scolded this dude.
I needed to reel it back a little bit.
Yeah, or oh shit, I need to reel it back. But then after reflection and asking a few of my friends that were there at that moment, they all said, dude, that was perfect.
Yeah, they needed to hear it.
They needed to hear it. And as much as it is a reality check, it was good that you came out and stood up and said, hey, this is not right.
Yeah, no, these are good points. But I wanted to say, like, the reason why we wanted to point these out, it's all around. The pattern is that you self-critique yourself a lot and you are your worst critic. And that's the common theme. So during these situations, as you're doing these things, it's just you're always self-doubting. Be like, oh, am I doing too much? Am I doing too little? Did I say the wrong thing? Did I say the things I needed to say? Did I do the right thing? Like, it's all these things that are going in your head. But I think the common thing is just to be yourself, keep pushing through and power through. If it is like a pitch or something for work, or if you need to stand your ground, as long as you're being respectful, you just need to say what you need to say to stand up for yourself.
Being your genuine self is most important too. And obviously, whatever that you're doing in your genuine self, as long as it's respectful to other people, like you said, you're going to be fine.
Yeah. I think the other thing that I wanted to add, which is important, it was important for me as well, because I am a person who does catastrophize in my head, is be mindful of how you are talking to yourself during these situations. So it's okay that you are self-criticizing, because that's a way for you to gauge if you're doing better or worse than last time. But as long as your mindset is you are critiquing to better yourself for the future situations, that's a good thing. But if you realize you're talking to yourself and telling yourself that you're an idiot or you're dumb or all that kind of stuff, you should try and overcome that and talk to yourself in a better way. Like, if you're critiquing yourself and calling yourself names, then that's not you got to change that. But if you're doing it where you're truly just critiquing yourself to do better, then that's fine.
Yeah, you always got to critique yourself in a positive way, right? And that positivity is what's going to drive you to do better in the next time, or in future. So it is human to do all of this, but just making sure that you're having that positive mindset behind every time that happens.
Yeah,
I think that's probably the biggest thing that takes away in this type of situation.
Yeah. I think we'll keep it simple and just remember to be kind to yourself.
Yeah, 100% kind, being positive mindset, that is very, very important. That's all, and thank you.
And bye.
Thank you so much if you have reached to the end. We really appreciate you for tuning in. And if you'd like what you hear, please share it with your friends or family and subscribe to our podcast on whatever platform you are listening to.
Make sure you share any topics you'd like us to cover or questions you might have to our Instagram.
Slide it into our DMs.
Pika. You can also stay in the loop of all the behind the scenes and the release of our new episodes there too. Our Instagram is Ask the Duo Podcast. That's AskTheDuopodcast. Man, feels like I'm in a spelling bee competition right now. Alright, that's it for now, and we'll see you back here for our next episode. Bye!
See ya!